Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today we're going to give our hot take review of the game that we just finished playing, Nemesis. But before we do, I have a little bit of news and a poll to discuss. News is, by the time you listen to this, I will have been on a live stream with Board Game Captain, which is a YouTube channel, nice content reviewer that's based out of Chicago. And he invited me to be on just a live discussion with him. We're going to be talking about upgrading your board game components, and sounds like a fun conversation. We'll be on there with Board Game Gran and Riley Stock. So the four of us will just be having a fun conversation. So by the time this comes out, it will have already happened, but I will talk it up on Twitter as well, and hopefully you guys will get a chance to watch it live and interact with us and chat with us. This will be my first live stream, by the way, so be gentle, be nice to me, but I am looking forward to it. I think it'll be a fun thing to do and fun thing to talk about.
Can I comment?
Absolutely. You can, Adam.
Can I haggle you? Can I be an internet troll on you?
Yeah, I think you can be blocked too, though. I'm pretty sure that they can block you.
Oh.
No. But come on in. Haggle away. It'll be good. Is haggle the right term? Are you like trying to make trades with us, or is
heckle?
Heckle.
It's
Yeah,
heckle.
I think that's what you're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
so
correct.
Tim, just be safe.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. So I did ask a poll on Twitter this week, and my question was, do you sleeve the cards in your board games? Now, I have to say, you guys have to tell me whether this is true or not, but when I asked this question, I was like, wait, deja vu, did I ask this in the past? So have I put out a poll? Did we discuss this on an episode before, or is this the first time I've asked this question?
If we did, it's long enough ago that I don't remember it. So let's talk about it again, because I sure don't remember what you guys said.
Right. Let's rehash it if we did. I remember it.
Okay, perfect. I swear to God, every week I put a poll out, and then I was like, wait, did I already ask that one? One of these days it's going to happen, I promise. Someday you're going to be listening to this show, and you're going to be like, they already covered that.
We'll call it a double take.
So I asked about sleeving cards in games. Here are the options I gave. All of them, regularly, special games only, or never. And this is something that I think I know where Chris stands here, but Adam, I honestly am not sure where you stand with sleeving. So Adam, why don't you start? How did you answer this? Do you sleeve your games?
My answer was perfectly clear. The games most prone to receiving a lot of hand goo.
That's
sleeves.
right.
Tim, did you just spit your drink out a little bit?
You did answer that on Twitter.
Nothing strange about that answer at all. This makes total sense.
No, but
get your mind out of whatever gutter it's in right now.
I don't understand what that means. Like, why would a game be more prone to hand goo? Like, I understand you don't want hand goo on your games, like whatever hand goo is to you, but why would a game be more prone versus less prone?
I'm not sure we want to know the answer to this question, so check, please.
Right. Okay, so a game where you're gonna handle the cards a lot. Terraforming Mars, you're gonna like shuffle 800 times because there's like 900 cards. You're gonna be passing out 10 at the beginning of the game. You're gonna go through 4. So, your hands, even though I haven't sleeved Terraforming Mars because there's way too many cards to sleeve. So let me think of the games I actually have sleeved. I think Star Wars Rebellion, I have all those cards sleeved just because it's special to me and I want to preserve the awesomeness, and I like all those cards and I love the quality there.
So not really related to hand goo there. That's more just that the game is special.
Yeah, I think maybe the hand goo answer was totally farcical and I just sleeve the games I want to sleeve.
And I think what you meant to say is games that are going to get more wear than is what
yes,
you were saying. Okay.
That's exactly right.
That makes sense.
But I don't even do that. Like looking back at my games, I don't even sleeve the games. Like PAX Premier, I should probably sleeve that one because those cards are beautiful. But the feel of those cards without the sleeve on them, I don't know what they're made out of. A special Afghani rosin or something. They're amazing. They feel fantastic. So I do have some games sleeved, and I don't know if I can pinpoint any kind of rhyme or reason as to why I sleeve them.
Chris, what about you? How'd you answer?
Hell no. I don't sleeve anything. I even have some sleeves. Like I have a sleeve set for Return to Dark Tower because it came with them. And there are even these fancy sleeves that have like a border around them that fits with the art and stuff. And it's these really nice sleeves, and I'm just not doing it. And the thing is, to me, it just makes it feel weird. It doesn't feel right anymore. I like the way that cards feel in my hand, and I don't want to change that. It almost feels to me like that weird plastic cover on your grandmother's couch. I just don't want that on my cards.
That's right. That's exactly what card sleeves are. They're the plastic covers on your grandmother's couch. No, I answered never personally because I don't like to sleeve any board games. Now, there's a couple games that I almost wish I had because I've played them enough and the cards are wearing, and it'd be like, man, I love this game so much. I played it a ton. I shuffle the cards all the time, and it's starting to wear. But I'm glad I don't, to be honest. The only games I've sleeved are a couple games where the Kickstarter version or like an upgraded version came with sleeves. So I've got sleeves. I throw them in there.
Hold on. Are you the Magic tournament scene player of 1986?
First of all, I think that's probably a good reason why I don't like sleeving, and that is that with Magic, when you would play like a limited tournament, you maybe weren't required to sleeve, but it was highly recommended because it prevented cheating and marking cards and stuff like that. So literally, I would play limited tournaments every weekend, and I would go every week, pay $20 to sign up for a tournament, and then pay $10 for a thing of sleeves to sleeve the cards that I just put together, the deck I just put together. And so it's just like this constant thing, and it's a pain in the butt, and it protects the cards. And in that case, it makes a little bit of sense because you're playing with cards. You could pull a card out of a package and literally sell it for $100 after you finish the tournament. So do you want the $100 or do you want to take $50 off by not sleeving it? But for board games, this is it's not a collectible hobby, not to me anyway. And it's not something where I'm like investing in these games. So I'm okay with a little bit of wear on them. I think the only game that ever wore enough where I was like, oh yeah, if I had sleeved this, it wouldn't have shown as much was like Clank in space, which Chris, I think you got my copy now. But the starter decks in that, because those are played every time and they got played a lot. It was one of my first hobby games I got, and so that one was starting to wear quite a bit. But even Everdell, which I've played like 100 times, I never sleeved. There's a little minor wear on them, but they're in pretty good shape. So I think like modern games are high enough quality that even if you play them a lot, and let's face it, how many of us play the same game over and over again? With how many games that are available in this hobby, they're gonna last, and so it's not that important to me.
Chris, something you mentioned about the feel of the cards, I totally agree with that. So that's a pro for me of not sleeving the cards. A pro for me of sleeving the cards, though, is have you ever gone to shuffle? When you're shuffling sleeves and sleeves, they just slide right into each other. And you can that's just a nice feeling. But yeah, Grandma Couch thing, I'm totally feeling that too, Chris. So pros and cons.
Yeah, but the response to that, Adam, is that if you're side shuffling, it does work a little bit better with sleeves on. And of course, if I'm not sleeving, I usually am side shuffling to try to keep the cards in a little bit better shape. But with really tall stacks, I have to get a couple riffle shuffles in or it's never going to happen, right? So Terraforming Mars, Everdell, I'm going to riffle shuffle, and I can't riffle shuffle with sleeves on cards. I mean, you can, but it's just like they get caught in each other and stuff like that. So it actually makes it harder to shuffle when you have a large stack of cards. And then with a large stack, they're like falling all over the table, and the stacks never stand up. Like I've heard everybody say, if you sleeve Arc Nova, you can't put it in one stack. It's too tall. You actually have to have several stacks of cards to keep it up. So
makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not a sleever. So, by the way, this was our most answered poll. We had
Really?
173 people vote on this poll, which
Wow.
I thought it was kind of a throwaway question, but everybody wanted to answer this one.
You unlocked some hidden passions.
By the way, if you don't follow us on Twitter, you should. BG_hot takes. We ask one of these weekly polls every week, and we love to get our listeners answering results here, but also we may read your results on the air. But more importantly, there are so many fun and interesting answers to these comments that I can't read every week. So follow the poll, check it out, see what other people are saying. It's always a lot of fun. So I'll just read a couple select ones here, but I'll start with the poll results. So 6% said they sleeve all of their games. So that's actually a little lower than I expected, because I know there are some people that are like avid sleevers, but 6% were just all in. 11% said regularly. So that's, 17% that are mostly sleeving everything. And then 49%, almost half, said special games only. So this is people maybe that are worried about super collectible games or really nice games, or like Adam, you were saying, a game that you shuffle a lot, or that like Star Wars Rebellion, that you just you have everything upgraded, so you just want it to stay in good shape, right? And then 34% said never. So yeah, it's kind of a wide distribution here. There's about 50%, 70% that are actually sleeving at least occasionally, and 30% that aren't. So a couple people commented on this. A lot of people did, actually. First, Board Game Chatterbox. Any game that BGHT Adam is playing, I don't want his hand goo anywhere near my card games.
I second that.
Seth Gonzalez said, I've been itching to sleeve my favorite games to preserve them, but I noticed that my most avid game friends do not sleeve their games. So does it only protect from the worst scenarios? How long does it take until fingers rub off artwork? Beats me. I'm still undecided here. So listen, Seth, I was actually listening to another podcast the other day, and we're talking about sleeving. The guy on the show, this is Secret Cabal, actually. So it's Don from the Secret Cabal. The rest of the guys were harassing him about sleeving all of his games. And he's like, you know what, you're right. I sleeve them to protect the games, but I've spent so much on sleeves, I could have replaced all of the games that would have worn by this point for less money than I spent sleeving the games. So yeah, it's a bad insurance policy. If you like the feel of it or whatever, it makes sense. Josh Drake said, I sleeve it if I like it.
So if you like it, then you better put a sleeve on it.
Brian Chandler, fewer sleeves equals more games. 2 exceptions, expansions with poor card back color matching, which does happen pretty frequently, unfortunately. So, if your expansion backs don't match the original back and it makes a difference that you can tell, that's okay. And then he said my LOTR TCG collection from 2001, still penny sleeved, still amazing. So this is a game he's had for 21 years, played it a lot, and it's still in good shape. And that's kind of fun. I've got a Magic Cube at home too that I've been playing for 15 years that is still sleeved, and I'm glad it is because those cards would not have held up by this point. I wanted to call out though, like, for example, I played Underwater Cities a couple days ago, and the expansion doesn't match the back color at all. But it doesn't matter because, like, you're pulling a card off the top of the Arrow 1 deck, and it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to make a different decision based on what I see on the back of that deck. Nobody else is going to either. So a lot of the time, even if they're a different color, it doesn't really matter.
Maybe it doesn't matter, but it does matter. It's so frustrating and annoying. You're like, oh, why didn't they just spend the time to do it right? Terraforming Mars, like, come on. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Mr. Rao Gaming Rants and Reviews said 2 types of games get sleeves: games that get played regularly that require rigorous constant shuffling, or games that are out of print and I won't be able to replace cards if they are wrecked. So that's okay, fair enough, right? A game that you can't replace, that's fine. My take is that if a game is good enough to need sleeves, it's going to get reprinted. So if you're sleeving cards that are out of print, it's probably because they're not good games most of the time. Okay, I won't call out what's that Civilization game that's been out of print for 10 years?
Battlestar Galactica.
No. There's I can't think of it right
Rome,
now.
the something
Yeah,
Rome.
that's it. Yeah, the Rome game,
Yeah.
whatever that one is. Okay, one last answer I'll read here. Board Game Sire said, so far I've only sleeved Terraforming Mars because I like to use fan-made cards, which are not quite the same quality. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, he's doing some basically like print and play stuff with his game, and he wants it to blend in. And that's a perfectly good reason to sleeve cards, because then it will give you the same experience, but it adds to the gameplay. Now, do you really need fan-made cards for Terraforming Mars? I mean, how many times do you have to play that after it runs out of interesting decisions? But cool, if you're doing it, then that makes a lot of sense. So we're going to jump into a description of Nemesis, and after that, we'll be talking about a Nemesis-themed cocktail, as well as a couple games that have been on our table, including Ghosts of Christmas and Planet Unknown.
In Nemesis, 1 to 5 players are space travelers having one really bad day. You awake unexpectedly from hypersleep, groggy and confused, and one of your comrades is lying dead on the floor next to their sleep chamber. This leads to a lot of questions. What's happening? Where's the ship headed? Why is there a dead body on my feet? You stumble off down the corridors of the ship in search of answers, and the rest will play out over the course of the game. But it's probably not a big spoiler to say that your bad fortune involves a group of marauding aliens that want nothing more than to kill you, eat you, or at least use your soft, squishy human body as a nursery for its nasty little babies. Sounds simple, right? Sounds cooperative, right? After all, we're all in this together, right? Well, not so fast. Each player has their own goals and win conditions. So my goal may be to kill the alien hive, even if it means blowing up the ship. Your goal may be to make it back to Earth at all costs, so interests may not necessarily be aligned, and your shipmates may not exactly be your friends. As if this wasn't bad enough, you have to get all this figured out before the ship either self-destructs, as reflected by the self-destruct track, or enters hyperspace, as reflected by the countdown track. Any players who haven't either entered hypersleep or made their way to a functioning escape pod when these tracks run out either get blown up or smushed against the bulkhead. This day is just getting worse and worse, isn't it? So the rest of this game is played out over a series of rounds that includes a player phase, in which space travelers do a whole bunch of different actions, and an event phase, in which a whole bunch of bad things happen to those space travelers. During the player phase, players take any one of a number of actions. These could include basic actions like movement, attacking an intruder, picking up objects, and the like. Players may also be able to take actions associated with the room where they're located. For example, in the armory, a player could refill their weapon. Or on the bridge, a player could change the ship's destination. Players can also take card actions by playing a card with a specific action on it. Finally, players can take actions associated with objects they're holding, such as using a tool or applying a field dressing to a wound. Each action has a cost, and that cost is paid by discarding cards from their active hand. After all players have used all of their cards or passed, the event phase begins. During this phase, the various countdown tracks progress, intruders attack, events, almost always bad, get resolved, and new aliens either emerge onto the board or make it into the queue to do so. We'll talk throughout the episode about the various mechanics of this game, but I do want to point one out that's always on everybody's mind, and that's noise. It's what you make when you move around the ship, and it's what tips the intruders off to your location. Each time a player moves from one room to the next, they do what's called a noise roll, and normally this will result in placing a noise token in an adjoining hallway. If a hallway gets a second noise token, you've been found, and an alien shows up. Needless to say, that's not ideal, and hopefully you're armed for the encounter. This cycle will repeat itself for several rounds, with the game ending because either 1, the ship explodes, 2, the ship enters hyperspace, or 3, all players are either dead, in hypersleep, or in a working escape pod. If at the end of the game any players are left alive, players will reveal their endgame objectives, and anybody who met their goals wins. There's no points in Nemesis, and there can be multiple winners or multiple losers. In fact, everyone can win or everyone can lose. So be as cooperative, or not, as you want to be, and see who's still standing at the end. Nemesis was designed by Adam Kopinski and is published by Awaken Realms.
All right, so we're going to talk about the gameplay and mechanisms here, but I just wanted to point out that Chris and I played this game once before in person, and we talked about this a couple episodes back on our PDXCon recap. So if you want to hear about our super hot takes and initial thoughts right after playing it the first time, you can listen to that episode. And then for this one, the three of us, as well as Steve, played on Tabletop Simulator, and this was Adam's first play. So you're going to hear Adam's very initial thoughts. And I think this is actually really helpful. When the crew said, hey, let's play Nemesis again, I thought, that's too soon. We just talked about it a few episodes back. But then it occurred to me that it's probably really helpful to have played this game a second time before doing a full review of it. Because even after playing the first time, where I had a very, very good time and had a blast with it, I was worried that there could be plays where you don't have a good time and some things could maybe not be as fun. So it was good to at least have a second experience and be able to kind of talk to that a little bit. So with that said, I just want to call out that it was a very different experience. The first time played out very differently. My objectives, my character played out very differently, and the flow of the game played out very differently. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The experience can be very different. In some ways good, in some ways bad. And you know, like having that varied experience is great, but it's not all necessarily good. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is just the asymmetric players, because now with the second play, I got a chance to play with another character. On the first play, I was like the soldier, right? Had the biggest weapon, had the best attack cards, and I felt really good about that. It was really fun to play them because I always felt pretty confident that I could go into a combat and do well with it. So this game, I was a little scared going in without that kind of power, and I started with the captain this time. The captain had a couple interesting abilities available to them, but I didn't end up using most of them. Some of them were like being able to tell other people what to do or direct people to move other places, and I didn't use those. But he did have an interesting weapon, and it gave me a chance to kind of just play around with that a little bit. So I would say that I did like that it was asymmetric, gave me a little bit different experience because of the character I played, but not so asymmetric that playing the game was any different. I was able to just jump right into it and start playing it.
I'll jump on with the asymmetry there. Yeah, as the soldier, I was a soldier that you just alluded to, Tim, and I did have these cards, and you guys mentioned, hey, we need to have probably somebody that can take out these aliens and put up a good fight before one of these guys, intruders, before these guys come in and slaughter us all and give us a chance. So I thought just right away, kind of deciding the makeup of the team and knowing you guys knew a little bit about which characters would have which powers. I thought that was kind of cool, kind of a team composition, or you're kind of drafting your whole team that's going to wake up to run the show. That whole aspect right there up front was really, really neat, I thought.
Well, and one of the interesting things about picking your character is, like everything in this game, it's cooperative if you want it to be. So you can certainly take the approach of, hey, let's build the most effective team to get the job done. On the other hand, you kind of know what your goals are going to be when you pick your character. You also, if you have a goal that's not really friendly to the rest of the crew, it might behoove you to have a character that's able to carry out those goals, even though it's really not a team effort. You're doing this for your own good. So in this game, I don't think we're at that level of play. We haven't played enough times to be able to really get into that level of strategizing. I imagine you probably could, but we didn't. And I think we actually had a pretty well-balanced team. So Adam had the soldier who did all the fighting. Tim had the captain, who was also pretty good at fighting. Steve was the scout, who could do a lot of scouting.
Steve just found a lot of items for himself and didn't help us at all. Yeah, so that was completely wasted for the team.
And then I had the scientist, who is not known for his fighting, but ironically, it was the scientist at the end of the game in his wheelchair with a melee attack who took out the alien that would have ended the game for us. So just saying that. But it gave you an interesting opportunity to do things that didn't really lend themselves to fighting, but were super useful. Like I had the ability to get on a computer anywhere in the ship and do anything on any other computer somewhere else in the ship. And I had the ability to evaluate or analyze, study eggs, bodies, what have you, in different locations without having to get to the lab. Those kind of things are really useful, but they weren't really great for defending myself when the aliens came.
Hey, Chris, so did we pick the characters after we saw our objective cards or before we saw our objective cards?
We saw the objective cards before we picked our characters, I believe.
Okay, I couldn't remember how that played out. I definitely didn't make that decision based on the objectives. But the interesting thing is that because of the way the objectives play out, so let's talk about that next, and that is that you get 2 objective cards at the beginning of the game. Most of the objective cards, though, have 2 different objectives on them. They're just variations. Like, one of my objective cards said, the ship has to get to Mars. The other one said, the ship has to get to Earth, but the nest has to be destroyed as well. And then the other objective card said, kill player 4, which was Adam, I think, or be the only surviving player on the ship. So they're kind of, each of the objective cards has different goals, and then within them you have a couple different choices. What's interesting about it is that you don't have to make that choice until the first encounter happens, and that's usually going to be a few rounds into the game. So things are starting to play out a little bit. People have started to talk a little bit about what they want to get done. Whether they're telling the truth or not, it's completely up in the air, and I'll get back to that. But then once the first alien pops out, then you have to discard one of those. And that's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting that you can kind of be working towards either or and kind of see how the scene is being set before you make that decision. It was stressful because I didn't know, 3 turns in really what the right choice was. So it was a tough choice, but it was kind of a fun decision and fun situation to make. Now, let me circle back to why I didn't like that we were talking about what we had to do. So there was, we're 1 turn into the game, and Steve starts asking questions like, guys, where do you want to go? What do you want to get done in this game? And I think that turns me off because I don't like lying. We've talked about this before. I don't like in hidden trader games where I have to put on I have to put on my poker face and pretend like I want to do one thing but don't want to do the other thing. And so direct questions like that are not fun to me because I feel like if I give you information and you're opposed to my objectives, you're going to lie to me. If I don't give you information, or if I tell you a lie about it, I don't feel good about that, and it might not be helpful anyway. And so I would have preferred if we just hadn't had that conversation. We just kind of started doing our things without ever talking about it. But I guess the rules don't disallow that. Is that right, Chris? Like, is that an okay thing to just ask direct questions?
I don't think the rules actually say anything about that. But in reality, the rules say for many things in this game that you can have information and say anything about it that you want. You don't know if you're telling the truth or not. So for example, I may say, hey, all I want to do is get the ship back to Earth. So we do a whole bunch of things. But in reality, I end up sabotaging one of the engines. So when everybody gets into hypersleep and thinks they're headed back to Earth, really what I've done is set us up to blow up the ship. So whether you want to do that or not, I guess really depends on the players. But I don't think there's a rule against it.
Yeah, the objective cards here create this potential air of distrust right off the bat. So you alluded to this, Tim, just by reading your own objective cards, like, man, now I have a sense of what's going on in this game and what these other players might be doing or what they definitely might not be doing. Mine was kill player 3, which was Tim, and survive, or it was you and at least one other person have to survive. So those were my 2 choices. And this game would have been totally different if Tim had picked kill me and I had picked kill Tim. It would have been just weird. I don't know if it would have been fun. And then the way we kind of all decided to do these objective cards, we kind of all decided right then and there that, all right, well, we're all going to try to help each other but we didn't really know if we were all going to try to help each other. It ended up playing out like that. We were all it ended up being a co-op game. So it's very group dependent. It can go one way or the other right off the bat. I thought that was really interesting. How many games do that? Like, not that many. So the objective cards were fantastic here. Just a really neat aspect and unique aspect of this game.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Adam. Those objectives make a world of difference. And the fact that you get two of them on one card. So you pick one card, but even within each card, you get two options. And they are very different. My two options were either get the ship back to Earth, which is what we ended up trying to do, or I ended up trying to do. And the other is, I am the only survivor. Wow. Okay, so there's a big difference there. But even though we had that conversation at the beginning, like you said, we didn't really quite know what to make of it. I didn't even know what to make of it. So, I mean, I felt like there might be some point in this when I have to say, all right, I need to pivot to my other objective. If it looks like the first one, I'm not going to be able to meet it. And so even within myself, I was kind of debating, well, really, what should I be doing here? What's most likely to get me through this game? And so there was this really tense air throughout the entire game where I really felt like we were pulling together. We were playing it cooperatively, but anything could have turned at a moment's notice and gone sideways. Like that, I don't remember what Steve's stuff was, but I feel like he would have bolted in a second, or Tim could have bolted in a second and done something else. Tim, even at one point, I thought this was kind of an interesting dynamic of the game. One of his objectives was to destroy all the eggs in the nest. And then we got to almost the very end where fires are starting on the ship and we're getting bombarded by aliens and we're all trying to make it back to the hypersleep chamber. And one of the event cards causes an egg to get hatched in the nest. And he said, okay, right now I could just screw all you guys and, blow up the ship or send it to another place or whatever. I forget what the other thing you had was. But I'm going to get this egg. I'm going to go back out of my way to do this. And I mean, it felt like a movie playing out. And I absolutely loved that.
Yeah, the funny thing is too, that, and this is why this game is probably sometimes going to, miss for me, is that the right thing for me to do there was I was right by the cockpit. I had two options. I could go up to the cockpit, change the direction to Mars, and then move to the Hypertorium. And they would have caused Chris to have to spend like 5 rounds to try to get up and reroute the ship to Earth. But I knew we were getting to the end game. It was like things were getting a little bit hectic and crazy. I was like, there's no way he'd survive that. Or I would have to waste like 3 actions or 3 turns, maybe even 3 rounds, to then go back to the nest, kill this egg at great risk to myself because there's a chance that an alien's going to come out, and then get back to the Hypertorium. And the reality is that the right move for me to do was to send the ship to Earth, or to Mars. But it would have just made me feel bad because you guys worked with me, right? You guys helped me out getting this nest cleared, which was so interesting to me because you didn't need to do it. We just kind of all agreed early, let's work together. And I said, hey, if you don't help me do this, I've got to send the ship to Mars. So if you help me do it, I'll work with your objective. And Adam was just like, sure, I'm game. I'll help you guys out with that. And so we all just worked together. And after all that work, I was like, well, I'd feel so bad if they helped me so much early in the game and then I don't help them now. So I went and did the thing, and I luckily made it out alive. But that's kind of why this type of game is really weird for me, because I'm not going to play to the best of my ability. I'm going to play to what my feeling is about the morality of my decisions. And I shouldn't be playing like that, but it was hard. The thing is, it's so thematic. It makes like you feel it, right? You feel like you're part of this team then.
Right. So your choice was do the greedy, self-serving thing or the easy thing, or do the harder thing that's going to help the whole team. Or at least Chris. I was indifferent to where we ended up. But you knew that so everybody could accomplish their goals if you went and did the hard thing versus only a few of us accomplished. So what a game, right? What kind of game is going to offer these kind of choices like that? So I thought it was just fantastic.
So Tim, you had said that you didn't know if this game would always hit for you because of that. I look at that and say, what a unique opportunity to actually put some of your own personality into how a game goes. I mean, I think that's kind of a win. Although I will say this is not a game you play for league points. I mean, if you're doing a game night where everybody's trying to win, that's not what you do. In fact, I think it was we were on Twitter and somebody had commented on that was one of the reasons why they didn't love this game so much. But I mean, for something like this where we were sitting down to have an experience together, I thought it was pretty amazing.
The reason I said that I don't know that this is always going to hit for me, because what if I did pick the objective that seemed the right one to do at the time, which is kill Adam, or be the only one off the ship? Can I be successful without feeling bad about it, wrecking everybody else's game night. Like, I don't think that I can. And so there are some times where this game is going to be bad for me because I don't want to make it bad for other people. And so that's where it's a risk for me.
That's the point I wanted to bring up. Would you guys play this game with strangers? What? Like, there's no way I could play this game with people I didn't know. I'm always going to play this game. Like, I'm going to try to do the honest, I'm going to be forthright. I'm going to be like, hey, sorry, I have to try to kill you, Tim. I'm just going to have to say it. Like, my objective is to kill you, Tim. And
I don't know if that's true.
like, I couldn't, or I just wouldn't pick that objective. You know, I couldn't do it. Like, we have like a thing going in Eclipse, and at least we know that we're going after each other. But here to be like conniving and like help out for like 3 or 4 rounds, and then like, oh, here's a chance to trap him, and you throw him out the airlock or lock him in this thing with an alien and see you later. Like, no, I couldn't do that. It's just too manipulative and backstabby. I don't know. So, but if you're playing the game with people who love diplomacy and love to tell lies to your face and then throw that 180 in there and then throw you in the trash or what, you know, it's going to be very group dependent. And I don't know if I would want to play this with a different kind of person.
I'm going to ignore that reference to diplomacy because this is nothing like diplomacy. But I do want to ask, don't you kind of get a little thrill at the idea of playing this game and going into it going, I'm going to be the hidden traitor this time. I'm going to pick the nasty goal, and I'm going to try to fool people into... it sounds like it could be actually fun to try.
Yeah, Chris, I got to say, when Adam was saying that, and he was just responding to my saying, I don't think I could have fun doing that. On the other hand, every time that I've had to make that decision of whether I did like take the mean card or take the easy, like the nicer card, the mean card, it does seem like a fun challenge. Right? Like, because it's not easy to do, and the game gives you some mechanisms to mess with other people, but they're not easy to do, and they're not easy to do without giving yourself away either. So it actually does seem like something I might want to explore at some point. I don't know if I'll be good at it, and I don't know if I'll feel good about it at the end of it, but I kind of want to explore it and see if I could pull it off.
You had said before something about not wanting to ruin people's game night. You know, my take on this was, if you had been the hidden traitor in this game, that would not have ruined my game night. I would have gone, aw, damn. Okay, the story just changed, but I don't think it would have upset me. I think in a way it kind of just would have made this movie go off in an interesting, different direction. So I would not have bothered me if someone did that to me. I mean, obviously I'd try to win, and it might be annoying if I didn't, but I would see that as part of the game, unlike some games like Diplomacy where it just, I don't know, it's just a whole different thing. But again, not going there.
So let me talk about something that I did find an interesting difference, now that we've played it 2 times, that I think I can speak to a little bit. And that is that the game lends itself to a lot of mechanisms for thematic purposes that are probably unnecessary, because a lot of them you will not interact with in a particular game session. And that bugs me a little bit. Now, I understand why they do it, and I think in the same way, it gave us like a very different experience on the second play than it did on the first play. But let me talk about a couple of those really quickly. Card crafting, right? There's the opportunity to search rooms and pull up cards out of rooms, right? And if you have managed to get the right 2 types of cards, you have a crafting action, which lets you turn those 2 items into something that's maybe a more powerful action or a more powerful item or more useful item. And we didn't get a chance to use that either 2 games. So we went through a whole rules explanation and kind of mechanism set, and there's like iconography on our player boards, and nobody used that the first 2 games that we played. So it's a whole mechanism that was added in there. But if you happen to pull the right 2 things, and for example, you can build the flamethrower that way. And the flamethrower is great in the nest room because you can just burn it up and destroy it. And if that had happened to happen in this game where I got the flamethrower out and I just burned up the nest and that was my objective, that could have been really fun and cool. So it's kind of this like push and pull of like, is all the overhead of all these rules that are not going to come up every time worth it? I played the chief, and the chief has some cards that you can direct other players. You can force other players in your room to do something, or you can stop their action. The captain. And I didn't end up using those. I ended up just using them as discards for other things. But I had these cards in my hand that I had to process every time, and I never used them. But in a game where I was being the hidden trader, where I was afraid of a hidden trader, they might have been really useful and really thematic and really interesting. So it's kind of an interesting situation where you've got a lot of rules overhead in this game and a lot of like edge case rules, and it's there for thematic reasons, but it's still kind of, I have to ding it a little bit for having to go through all that when you could have streamlined it. You could have taken out the crafting and the game was still fun. We didn't do any crafting. The game was fine. And it would have been great if we had done it, but you could take out a couple of those things and streamline the game and make it easy, more approachable. And I'm going to talk to this more, but Adam's shaking his head. So Adam, tell me why you don't agree with me here.
You don't get into an Awakened Realms Nemesis grandiose game and try to hope for streamlined this and streamline. You're going to have these little side cases. That's what makes it so interesting to me, that you could, oh, I forgot I could craft this flamethrower. I can go over here and trade with Steve, who has these 13 items he's not even using. So Steve, trade this with me now. I got a flame. Let's go freaking burn this ship down and send it in crashing into Mars, and let's get out of here. Just things like that. It adds that potential of stuff that could happen and the thematics of it. And I think that's exactly why you play a game like Nemesis.
I'm with Adam on this one. I get that there's a lot of edge case rules, but unlike Great Wall, which we played recently, the edge case rules were not ambiguous. They were not oddball things that didn't really make any sense. I thought that all of the edge case stuff was actually pretty intuitive and didn't require a whole lot of teaching. I mean, what took me less than 20 seconds to explain crafting. I mean, it's a pretty simple concept. There is a few things that I noticed, like fire. Fire is something that I played a solo game of this, and there was fire everywhere. The fire was the story of the game. We didn't have any of it the last time, and we had one room that caught fire this time. That's kind of an edge case. But the edge case rules associated with that are all obvious from the cards that come out and the basic flow of the round. So I didn't find them to be particularly problematic. And don't get me wrong, I am not an apologist for crazy rule sets like Awakened Realms does. There's plenty of stuff they've done that frustrated me. I just think Nemesis got it right.
Well, let me explain why I'm bringing this up, because we did have a play of this a few weeks ago, and it was great, and it was streamlined, and it took us 2 hours to play. And then we played it just 2 weeks later, and it took us 5 hours to play. And there was a lot of rulebook checking, a lot. Like, we paused every single round, maybe several times around, to say, wait, I'm not sure how that works. Let me go back and check the rulebook. And that slowed the game down, and it made it a less fun experience. Now, the reason why the first experience was so good, I think one of the reasons was because Chris had put the effort in. He spent a couple solo sessions just internalizing those rules and playing through games and looking up all that stuff. So when we sat down to play, every time we had a question, Chris was like, no, this is how it works. And cool, it's awesome. But this has been 2 weeks, and there's so many little edge case rules and so many little mechanism sets that Chris didn't remember all that stuff, right? And it's only been 2 or 3 weeks since we played last time. And so we spent a lot of time saying, wait, how does this work? Wait, what happens here? What happens here? And I don't like that in a game experience. Now, I'm not saying it ruined the experience, but it definitely made it a less fun experience. So that's not a problem if you play this game every couple of weeks with the same group of people and everybody knows how it plays. That's fine, and it pays off. But you can make this game a lot more approachable and make it a lot more fun for me if I play it twice a year, if you take out 3 or 4 mechanisms that don't matter most of the time, right? That's the whole point of streamlining a game.
Yeah, to your point, Tim, the game did go long for me. I was ready to be done by the time we were getting to that 4th hour. And what you guys had said before, I was prepped for, a 2, maybe 3 hour game and something like that. And then crank out, we delayed the podcast because we were all too tired to do it that night. So yeah, that I was like, all right, this is getting tired. Am I going to make it in here or not? I'm probably going to die anyway because I got all these infection cards and contamination cards. Let's just get this over with. I'm ready to be done here. And it just kept going on and on and on and on. So I don't know if that was a function of having a 4th player or just some, like you said, Tim, some of these weird edge cases came up, some new little things. Because there was, I don't know, Chris, you did a great job with the rules, but there was those 3-4 times where we were like, we got to look it up. And so Yeah, okay, Tim. There's some educate. Awaken Realms is gonna have some weird stuff that you're gonna forget or just never have seen before.
I agree with you guys that this game went long, but honestly, it never felt to me like it overstayed its welcome. I felt like there was tension throughout the whole game. I was getting frustrated at the end because it was after midnight and we were still playing. So if it had been the middle of a day, like the first time that we played at PDXCon, I think I would have been fine. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think the game ended up feeling too long for me. It was the time of day that it was happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. And expectations too, Chris, because we did play it
Yeah.
before and it took like 2 hours after the rules teach, and this one took quite a bit longer. So it was a very different experience.
After complaining about the time, I will say that those last couple rounds were epic. Chris, you killed a queen with your wheelchair. That was amazing. I, after all these rolls and thinking like I was just gonna get slaughtered by this intruder coming up and just being in the hyper chamber for longer than you guys were. You guys were in and out of there, got your little pause and went to sleep right away. I was like, all right, now I'm just gonna get slaughtered. I'm never gonna get it. I actually killed one of the intruders. I made it into the thing and I had a chance of getting out of there. What the heck? Who would have thought? So all this improbable stuff, amazing stuff. And Chris, like, I was inadequately hyped for your wheelchair kill of the queen there. Like, you were trying to make it an awesome, and it was an awesome thing, but I was so sleepy and worn out at that point. I wanted to be excited, I wanted to jump up and down, but I was just like, that's cool that happened. Nice job. Yeah, like, that's about as much as I could muster right there.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. But since we are in the mechanism section of the podcast, I think we probably ought to talk about a mechanism or two. And there's a couple that I want to point out, and they're all good. And one of them is the way that the rooms function. Each room it's a hex, and on each hex, it's flipped. Well, each hex is flipped over, so you don't know where the rooms are as you start going out to explore the ship, which thematically the point there is that you're groggy from your hypersleep and don't know how to get around, so you're exploring the rooms as you go. So each one has a function, and it also has some kind of a condition token on it. So you flip the two of them over, you apply a condition token such as the room is on fire, or the room has slime in it, or the room has a malfunctioning computer, whatever it happens to be, and you resolve that. Then each room has a number of items that you can find in that room by searching, and there's numbers around the hex on the room, and you flip the hex to face whichever direction has the indicator pointing at the number of items in the room, and then every time you take an item, you turn it one notch so that now there's one item less until you get down to 0. And the double duty there, I think, is such an elegant, neat way to do that is very clearly done. Similarly, the noise rolls, where you roll a die when you go into the room, and each corridor out of that room has a number. So you roll the dice, and whichever number comes up, that's the corridor that gets a noise token. And if you get the second noise token in there, then an alien shows up. But it's the same thing, that you have this double duty where the numbers, the dice, tell you which corridor to go into, and they tell you where the noise token goes, and they tell you which direction an intruder moves when you get to the intruder phase, where they start moving around. And it says intruders move, all adult intruders move through corridor number 2. And so it randomizes this in this really elegant way that I think was done so effectively. And I just really appreciated the streamlinedness, which again is not something that I really expect from Awaken Realms.
I can't believe you just used streamlined in the same sentence there, but I did appreciate how that all worked. And after many other mechanisms to understand the rules mechanisms on, that one seems pretty streamlined. I think one other thing I want to talk about is the aliens, how the aliens work and when they appear. And this is pretty interesting because I like bag building as a mechanism in games a lot. And they managed to use bag building and completely turn it on its head and use it against me in a way that I have never seen before. And the way, basically what it is that essentially when two of these noise tokens overlap and you end up with an alien that comes out, you draw out of a bag to see what alien encounter you're going to have. And so the starting bag is not too tough. There's probably a little, I don't know what the makeup is, Chris, maybe you can speak to that, but there's probably a couple of adults, and there's maybe the queen's in there, and maybe there's a couple larvae or a few larvae or whatever. But you're more likely to draw a lower threat early in the game. And so that's an exciting moment, right? And when that threat gets drawn out and you're like, oh, it's the queen, and it just like the crowd goes wild, right? It's just like you don't know what to expect. But then at the end of every round, you're going to end up adding another alien to the bag, and it depends on what you pull out. And so this bag kind of gets worse and worse over the course of the game. But also, as an alien comes out, then that's no longer in the bag anymore. So that if you pull a couple of adults out, that your chances are actually looking better, So it's kind of got this ebb and flow. Like, we know that, and there's one blank token in there too. So you could pull it out and get nothing happens. Nothing comes out of there. And that one always goes back in the bag. So it just creates some really fun moments and some really frustrating moments. And, like, oh my God, the queen just went in there, or a breeder just went in there when I was hoping it was a larva, like, it's an interesting way to give that randomness to what's going to come out, because you don't know, and it just adds to the theme in another interesting way. So I did like it. I hated it, but I liked it. I hated it that it was so mean all the time, but I liked it as a mechanism.
Chris, I loved the hex rotation system of finding these items in the room. I thought that was super cool. And then the noise tracking. I've played a few other games with noise tracking, SEAL Team Flicks, and here it was just simple, so simple. And you roll the dice, put the noise out there. Oh, 2 noises, alien. And Tim, the bag building, holy cow! I haven't run this through my Azul calculator of awesomeness, but I believe the way the bag builder's designed here, the game is going to crescendo. It's going to get harder and harder as the game goes on, and more bad stuff keeps jumping into this bag. In general, you might have an off game, or a game might break that mold, but it's going to build up. I think that it's more likely the queen is going to pop out later in the game than at the early part of the game. So what a neat, just some very fascinating mechanisms and great use of odds in the design of this game. At first I was a little leery of flipping the alien card or the encounter card, whatever it was, and then you had that number in the top left. That was cool. Or the event tells you what's going to happen. The dual use there was cool. And I think there was similarly that other card would flip and kind of do the same thing. It is kind of streamlined. There's so much crazy stuff going on here, but the way it's presented is just, Tim's laughing at me. It's
crazy and cool, but not streamlined. Come on, you can't call it streamlined.
Maybe streamlined is the wrong word. And I'm not sure exactly what it is, because it's not exactly streamlined. There's complexity, but the complexity is intuitive.
Yes, is logical.
And elegant maybe is the right word. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I didn't find myself constantly going back and going, "Oh wait, hold on. What happens here? What am I supposed to look at on this card? What's the point of this?"
Right.
I didn't find myself doing that. The stuff moved so smoothly.
Yeah, it made sense.
Yeah.
So we could talk all night about mechanisms, because there's so many of them in this game, but let's jump over to the theme and production, and then we can circle back to kind of our final thoughts on the mechanisms in our final thoughts. So theme and production wise, this game is amazing, right? Like it's just an immediate sense of tension. Now, I will say that on my first play, I felt that tension higher, I think, because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what my opponent's objective cards could be, right? So I was just kind of like, I looked at my 2 objective cards in my first game and I said, holy cow, this could be scary, because I don't know what my opponents have. But after playing through a first game and seeing 6 of those cards, I had a better sense of it. So it didn't feel quite so scary. But it was still very thematic. It was so funny, like this first game, after we got through the first couple rounds and started talking about like pussyfooting around what our goals were and what our objectives were. And then everyone kind of felt like, okay, well, we can work together on this. Let's do this thing. And so me, Chris, and Adam are over there going for the queen's nest and, trying to punch eggs. And then Steve's just wandering around. He's saying that he wants to help us, but he's just randomly wandering around the bottom of the ship. We don't know what he's doing at all. And he's just collecting all these items and wandering around and being very opaque about what he's trying to accomplish. And so I was still nervous about it, right? Like the tension was still there. The theme is so built in here. And as I mentioned, like the negative is that it creates so many mechanisms, but the positive is that like the next time I play, I know that there's going to be a situation that's going to come up that's going to surprise me or excite me, because some really unique situation is going to come out and it's going to feel really thematic. Like I'm going to have the duct tape and I'm going to like repairing the escape pod and getting off the ship, right? That's the type of stuff that can happen here. So thematically, it's amazing. I'll jump into the production as well, because I do want to talk about that. But Adam, thematically, what do you think here? How did it feel for you on your first play?
Going back to those objective cards, Tim, that just instantly generates this paranoia. What's going to happen here? Who do I trust? Can I trust anybody? I don't know. What a great beginning to the game. Just presenting you with those two objectives right off the bat. You're like, oh goodness. And then this game is just, it's a storytelling generating machine. All these different things happen in this game. You mentioned Steve was kind of doing his own thing, but in the end, he rolled a little grenade into the room for us and blew up all these things and ended up helping us out and kind of saving the day. What a good guy. Was I going to make it off? It didn't look like it, but then I did get in there. But oh no, I was infected. Oh, this alien popped out of my guts and ended up destroying me. And what a horrible end to. And I was trying so hard to help you guys. I lugged this corpse over to the science room to do some analysis so that Steve could accomplish his goal. I was just helping you blow up the nest. I was trying to help all you guys so we could all just meet this goal and have more than one of us survive and make it off the ship. So I feel like this is exactly what Chris looks for in games, and I loved all the storytelling aspects. The stories were created from playing this game.
This game is by far the most effective use of theme in a game I've ever played. It is exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for, Adam. You are absolutely right about that. And the only downside is that playing with you guys kind of ruined it for solo for me. Because solo is you can do it solo, and it's actually a pretty cool solo game. But man, having 4 people out there doing things and interacting, and I mean, the amount of yelling and laughing and smack talking and all these things that were happening, and I don't trust you, and Steve's off trying to do this, and he's being all dodgy, and Tim's got ulterior motives, all of that kind of stuff. It creates such a cool atmosphere. And you mentioned the storytelling aspect of it. You truly could have taken the gameplay arc here and turned it into a movie. I mean, everything starts out slow and then it crescendoed to the point where, like, no kidding, we're all getting into the hypersleep room and the queen shows up. And then I'm melee attacking it, and then Steve came over and used a grenade, and I know he did something else that scared her off and like got her out of the room, but then another alien showed up. And it was all these things happening, and literally on one chuck of the dice at the very end, Adam manages to get himself into the hypersleep pod, which there's no way that statistically that he should have been able to do that, but he did it at the last minute, and I can just see this happening on the big screen. And that's how I felt this entire game, and that is so what I'm looking for in a game of this type.
Yeah, and speaking of the production, it's just perfect from top to bottom. I played this one time in person with Chris's. This was the retail copy, right, Chris? This wasn't like a special Kickstarter version or anything.
No, retail copy.
And obviously there's some cardboard shits and stuff like that, but the cards all have amazing art on it. The board is very thematic. It's very, just kind of puts you into this dark, scary mood going on. But my favorite part was the first time I had an alien encounter with the physical production, because the first 2 alien encounters, because Chris had the first alien encounter I saw, and he drew out of the bag, and it was one of the little spawn, the little larva. And it's just this little tiny like spider looking thing that comes out, and it was kind of like creepy, but it was kind of cute too. And it was just like, Chris, that thing's small enough, you could just step on it. And it's just like, it led to this moment, and he shot it and it died. It was easy. And then I had my first encounter, and it's an adult alien, and the thing was twice the size of my mini. And the minis are all beautiful, but then this alien, just like the presence of having this thing in your room, it was intimidating, it was scary. So, and they just hit it out of the park with the production here. I mean, Awakened Realms is great at this, but this was exceptional, and it added to the theme, and it added to making the gameplay more fun and more exciting. So I love the production of this game.
I haven't seen it in person. I've heard the legends of how amazing this game is in person, but I can say every single card had different art on it, and the art was just fantastic and intriguing. Awakened Realms, top marks for Nemesis, maybe one of the best produced games I've ever seen.
You guys already said everything that I was going to say. I could go on for another hour just repeating all the exciting things that I think are true about this production. In particular, Adam, what you just said about every card having its own art. Actually, that I do want to point that out, because that is above and beyond. Like, every character has a search card, for example, and every search card is different. Each character has their own search card with their art, their character. and hit it out of the ballpark. Awakened Realms could not have done better in this game.
All right, so let's go into our final question, which is, would you request to play the game again? And I'm going to start off here. When we first played it last time, and we played it at PDXCon, if you go back and listen to that episode, I said it was one of the best experiences I've ever had playing board games. I loved it. And I came home and I rated all the new games I played that weekend, and I rated it a 9. Really great experience. So second experience, I think it's pretty interesting to do that and talk about it again. I'll say that after my second play, I bumped it down to an 8. Now, an 8's still really good, right? But it did change the experience a little bit for a couple reasons. Number one, as I mentioned, without having just spent a lot of time trying to learn the game, we were a couple weeks away from it, and just getting through some of the rules exceptions and stuff like that just slowed the game down. And that's never fun to be digging through a rule book while you're trying to play a game. So if you play this game a lot, that's eliminated. But if you're playing it occasionally, or if it's a new play for you, expect to be digging through that rule book and trying to find those exceptions. The second thing that pinged it a little bit for me was that the play time was drastically longer. Maybe because it was 4 players, that was partly related. Maybe because we were digging through a rule book a little bit more. Maybe because we played on Tabletop Simulator on the second play. That's always a little bit slower, but I don't think that was the main thing. I think the main thing was that our scenario just played out differently. The way that things escalated and what our own objectives were and how we had to accomplish them just played out differently, and it took longer. And that's rough. Like, I don't really usually want to play a single board game for 4 or 5 hours, ever. It doesn't matter how much I love it. My favorite games, I don't want to play for 4 or 5 hours. And so that pinged it a little bit for me. But the fact that it only brought it down to an 8, and that I would rather play this than any other 4 or 5 hour game experience that I would have, says that it's still a fun experience throughout. And I would be happy to sit down. But now, see, now that I've done this, it's going to be an afternoon game. This is never going to be a like, hey, it's 7 o'clock at night, let's sit down and play a couple hours, right? Because I know that it can go a lot longer. So this is like hey, it's 12:30, let's bust open a cider or some coffee and sit down for the afternoon, and the rest of the day's shot, but we're going to sit down and have a great experience playing Nemesis. And I would love to do this, and I would pick it over Star Wars Rebellion, and I would pick it over ever trying Twilight Imperium, and I would pick it over any other long game experience I've ever played. But it does negatively impact it a little bit for me. And the last thing I'll say is that the first experience was so fun exploring that ship and seeing what rooms got turned over. I mean, I didn't watch any rules explanation. I didn't know anything to expect. And so it was true exploration on that first game. Every time I pulled a card off the deck to see what it, one of the item decks, I had no idea what to expect. Every time a room got flipped over, I had no idea what to expect. Well, that didn't happen on a second play, right? The excitement of the exploration was a little bit lower. That said, still a fun experience, played out very differently. It was still tense. It was still exciting. I still had fun with it. I will request to play this again in the right situation. The next time that the 4 of us get together, hopefully, in a few months, 6 months, we'll get together at another con. I would request that Chris brings this game out and we get a chance to play it in person again, because still had a really, really, really fun time with it.
I want to relate this game to another kind of hidden trader game, and that's Battlestar Galactica. I played that game one time, and that game, it was pretty fun. It had, you're kind of going along, and then this midpoint happens where there's this kind of reveal, some more Cylons come out, and now this distrust really starts to happen. Who is doing what? What's going on here? And all of these accusations start to fly, and it gets so entertaining. And that was about 10 minutes of awesomeness for about 5 hours of game in Battlestar Galactica. Here, you have those moments almost nonstop, the potential for those moments almost nonstop. The way Steve was playing, what is he doing over there? Why is he doing this? Ooh, is Tim going to go back to the control room? Is he going to change course for Earth and screw over Chris? What's going to happen if that goes down? There's all of these different interactions designed into this game that can shift it at a moment's notice. So people wanting that Battlestar Galactica experience, this game, Nemesis here, is going to replace that for me, hands down, no question, like not even a second thought. This game has it all. And the gameplay is so much more interesting. There's fun stuff to do here. It's not just, I shot some Cylons on the outside of the ship. I'm going to go do this thing over here. It's an outstanding game if you're looking for some social interaction, some social paranoia. Now, like you said, Tim, you nailed it. Am I going to request to play this game again? It's going to be situational. If it's the 4 of us, the right group, if I'm ready for some deceit, a little bit of, some rowdiness, if I know I might be getting screwed over hardcore, if I'm ready for that kind of interaction, then that's when I'll be requesting this one. So yes, I will request to play it again in the right scenario. I had tons of fun playing this one, and I think my tiredness was exactly due to time of day. Approaching midnight, I'm getting old. I want to go to sleep. I don't want to be trying to get into some cryopod and flying off to Earth.
I think, and Chris had the same question, or if there were times during the game where you didn't seem like you were having fun, or you seemed frustrated by things going on. Do you think was it just the length of time, the play, and the time of day, or have you just like gotten over some of the stuff that was frustrating you as we were playing it?
Well, knowing the mechanisms will help a lot. The kind of the flow, this, roll the noise die, then you're done. And my objectives too, my objectives weren't this or that. It was just one per objective card: kill Tim and survive, or survive with at least one other person. And there was no or to that. So I didn't have much to do. Is either, I was just trying to help you guys. Also, and it was largely my fault, I had run out of ammo and I should have done a lot more exploration and gathering these items and this and that, but I just booked it to the whatever it is, and tried to jump in there and freeze my butt to get home safe. So it was a little bit of greed, and I came back to bite me, and then, which is, fair enough in the game.
Maybe this gameplay wasn't super fun for you, but you could see the potential for it as you were watching how it was playing out and what everyone else was doing.
It was super fun for me, but I was very tired. So I had dulled emotions, and my tiredness was starting to beat out the fun factor for me. But it was tons of fun. And like I said, at the end, there was all these moments that I should have been like, this is amazing. But I was just like, I want to go to sleep. And so that's kind of how it went for me.
Not only will I be asking to play this game again, I'm excited to play this game again. I mean, I can't imagine getting together with you guys and not wanting to play this game. And I know we won't every time, because you guys are also correct in that it's a very situational game. I didn't realize the length could be 5 hours either, and so I'm a little leery of getting into a 5-hour game later in the day. I think, Tim, you made a really good point about this being a daytime game. When you've got a little bit of extra time, you're not worried about stressing out about wrapping things up, or you don't want anywhere you have to be. But absolutely, I thought it was amazing. Our first game, my solo game was fun. Our first multiplayer game was a lot of fun. And the third game, the one that we all four played, was absolutely stellar. The only downside was a little bit long and a little bit late. Other than that, I thought that the dynamic of having 4 players on that board doing all these things and feeding that tension and the paranoia was just unbeatable.
All right. Well, that will wrap up our conversation on Nemesis. We're going to talk about a Nemesis themed cocktail, as well as some games that have been on our table right after this.
So, Chris, what drink do you have for us to accompany Nemesis?
Well, this week, you guys aren't going to have to suffer through one of my history lessons or the arcane factoids. None of that nonsense. Instead, I've just got one highly tasty drink that is thematically right on point. So, in the movie Alien, the aliens have this acidic green blood. It's famous. Everybody who's seen Alien, and most people have, probably almost anybody who's played this game will have seen Alien. The blood is a big thing. It's kind of creepy stuff. And clearly there's no way that you could make the mistake that intruders from this game are the same as aliens, of course, because that would be copyright infringement. But given what we know about alien biology, I think it's probably a pretty safe assumption that all killer space critters have acidic green blood, right? It just makes sense. Which brings us to this week's cocktail, Alien Blood Punch. This drink comes to us courtesy of feastintime.com. That's feastintime, time spelled THYME.com. And trust me, this is a lot more appealing than it sounds. The recipe makes about 4 decent-sized servings, so you can make this for your alien party if you want to. So here's what you're going to need. 2 cups of pineapple juice, 2 cups of lime sherbet, a 1/4 cup of orange liqueur. No need to be fussy here. Just use whatever you have on hand, whether you triple sec, Cointreau, Grand Marnier, whatever you got. 6 dashes of Angostura bitters, 1 cup of ginger ale, and 1 cup of Prosecco, which is an Italian sparkling wine that you can find in pretty much any grocery store. So you're going to combine the juice, the sherbet, the orange liqueur, and bitters in a bowl and stir it until it's as smooth as you'd like it to be. You can have it be lumpy, you can have it be smooth. Then you'll add the Prosecco and the ginger ale, give it one last good stir, and then start pouring. Now, I will also add that for those listeners who do not like to partake in alcoholic beverages, take the alcohol out of it. It's amazing. It's a delicious party punch. I made one for my son, and he was head over heels, other than the fact that he thought the green color was just absolutely gross looking. But I think being a kid, he liked that too. So anyway, I couldn't prove it, but I doubt that anything will come bursting out of your chest after one of these, except maybe pure joy. So be safe out there.
Right on, Chris. I cannot wait to have one next time we're playing Nemesis together. So we're going to talk about a couple of games that have been on our table this week. There are a few games I really wanted to talk about. And so I put a poll up on Twitter and asked to our listeners on Twitter which of these games they wanted to hear me talk about. And we ended up with a 3-way tie exactly after like 60 votes. So that was completely ridiculous. But I had to give the call out to Seth Gonzalez, who's a regular listener. He interacts with us a lot on Twitter, and he really, really lobbied for his choice. I mean, he literally went out to all kinds of different board game communities he's a part of and was posting all of them. Even got banned on one of them for posting too much about answering on his poll. So Seth, for you, I'm going to talk about Planet Unknown. Planet Unknown is a new release. It was a Kickstarter game that I think was on Kickstarter a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, and it just went out to backers within the last couple of months. And it's a pretty interesting game. This is a polyomino game, and it's pure polyomino game. Like the whole puzzle is about basically each of you has a different planet, and you're trying to essentially explore it. And to do that, you're taking these polyomino tiles and placing them on your board. Now, the game is pretty streamlined, so I'm going to give you a really quick rules explanation and then talk about some things that stood out in a way that I did not expect them to. The game has a crazy production. There is literally a big Lazy Susan game trays thing in the middle of the table with basically 6 different sides to it. And on each of those 6 kind of pie-shaped wedges, there are 2 different types of tiles you can pick from. So what happens is at the beginning of the game, every player that's around the table, and you can have between 1 and 6 players, you put your little marker pointing to one pie wedge. So when somebody is the active player, they're going to turn the pie wherever this turntable, this Lazy Susan, whichever direction they want to, and they're going to be able to pick from one of the 2 pie wedges that are facing their marker. But at the exact same time, every other player is also going to pick a tile from one of those 2 spaces in their pie wedge. So there is no downtime in this game. When I'm taking a turn, you're taking a turn also. The only thing that's different between me being the active player is I get to set where the wedge goes, but everybody gets a tile. So we all take one of these tiles, and every one of the 12 different things is a slightly different polyomino shape. We all take one of these 2 tiles that are available to us, and we put it on our planet. And the planet is a big, grid of squares. And each of the tiles has 2 different types of lands on them. And there's 6 in the game. So there would be like an ocean type of land, and a forest, and a rock, and I think an energy, which looks like solar panels, right? So there's 6 different types of things, but there's always 2 different ones on each tile that you take. So you take one of these things out and you put it on your player board, and you activate I'm trying to remember for sure now, it's been a couple weeks since I played it, but you activate one of the things that's on that thing. I think one of the 2 types has like an icon on it. So you activate the icon that's on it, which is that type. Next to you is a player board that has 5 different tracks on it. So you move up the track related to that land type that you just did. And each of these 5 different tracks has like 20 spaces on them, and they all have bonuses all the way up, like all over the place. So every time you take a tile, put it on your board, you move up a track, and then you get the bonus of whatever that is. And it might be move up another track. It might be, get some points. It might be activate a bonus ability or whatever. But it's just like place a polyomino, get a bonus. Place a polyomino, get a bonus. So that's basically what the game is. It's pretty simple, but it's fun, right? Like you're placing these. Once you place the first one, you have to place additional ones adjacent. And the only restrictions are like, when you place them, like some of the tiles will have a little meteor icon shown on it, and you have to put a little meteor token on your board, and those block you from getting row or column points, because you're going to get points for every row and column you've got completed at the end of the round. So you're going to get these little meteor tokens that go out there. But one of the tracks you can move up will also let you move your little rover around the planet and then remove those tokens. So you can clean those up if you want to. Seems pretty streamlined, but it was fun. It was a lot of little bonuses that happen. What really made this game interesting, though, and I think really made it work, was that in between each player, you had a shared objective. Basically, between, let's say me, Adam, and Chris were playing, between me and Chris would be one objective that we were both trying to meet, but only the person who met it the best got the bonus points for it. And then between Chris and Adam, they would have an objective, and then between me and Adam, we would have an objective. And the objectives, at least the ones that I experienced, were things like have the least number of water tiles on your board, or have the least meteors on your board. And why that mattered is because when I'm rotating that turntable and picking one of those two icons, I'm forcing you guys to pick one of the two types of tiles that you're getting. So if I know that I want to have less water tiles than Adam has, every time I pick, I'm going to flip it so that Adam has to take a tile that has a water on it. And it's making him have to do that thing. And there was several other things, different like kind of combined goals or shared goals that you had like that. But it really mattered, and it was super fun to try to stick my opponent sitting next to me with things that would combat that, decision that I had to make. So yeah, fun game, very simple, very, very simple gameplay. It's as complicated as taking a tile and then getting the bonus for it. But it was a blast to move up those tracks, get the bonuses. As you get up some of the tracks, you're going to get extra abilities, so you kind of upgrade your civilization. And now when I played it, we played it all with the symmetric planet and symmetric corporations. And the corporations are these track boards that you can move up. But we looked at it afterwards, and there are dozens of different corporations you can play. Maybe that's exaggerated, but let's say that there's 10 different corporations you can play. So each of the track boards are different. They all have different bonuses you get. They all have different bonus, like extra abilities you can get. And then there's a whole bunch of different planets you can play, and the planets all have different restrictions, different bonuses, and stuff like that. So there's a ton of interesting asymmetry that you're playing around in this game. And it's a very simple game, but it's fun. I have to say, I was just super impressed with what this game did with a very, very simple rule set. Let's say, hey, Nemesis is on the other end of like the most rules you could possibly have in a game. This is almost the least rules you could possibly have in a game. This is probably like Ticket to Ride level of decisions that you have to make, but they were so fun. There was so many fun decisions. So I really, really liked Planet Unknown. It surprised me. It's a cool production. It was obviously a Kickstarter game, probably cost $100 to back it or something like that for what is a 20-30 minute game. But a blast, cool production. This turntable in the middle is amazing that has all these polyominoes in it. Have you guys heard of Planet Unknown? Is it something that was on your radar?
I almost backed this one, Tim. I remember it being on Kickstarter, and from what I've been hearing, maybe I should go out and get it. I've seen it at the bookstore. Barnes & Noble has it on their shelves, so I might have to go and pick it up. What is the youngest age that you could see playing this game? I have a couple daughters, 7 years old. What's is it going to be like for 10-year-old? What do you think?
Well, I think the rule set is really easy, and it's kind of one of those games where it's like the rule set's easy, but the strategy you're going to beat them every time if you're playing to your best, right? And if you're not playing to your best, it's not going to be fun for you, right?
Well, heck yeah, that's the point,
And so would I play with a 7-year-old? I'd probably beat them every time, because although it's not a complicated game, there are some strategic choices you can make. Now my daughter's 10. I think that she would be in the running for it, but I'd probably still beat her every time. So you can play this with younger kids for sure. This is a family weight game. But, like I think once you get up to that like 11, 12, 13 year age, that's where they're like thinking and they can get what you're trying to do and start to win at this game. So this is probably the right level for someone in that like pre-teen era.
I wouldn't discredit your daughter that quickly, Tim.
I have not heard of this one, but man, that is a nice looking game. And it sounds like fun too. I'm surprised, Adam, that you said you found this at Barnes & Noble.
They have a whole handful of this game. I heard it had been talked about recently, and Barnes & Noble has a good selection, and including this one. They had 10, 20 copies waiting to be bought down there.
No, Chris, I think there was a Kickstarter version. So like the one that I played with was a Kickstarter one. And I think the biggest difference is like they had like some screen printed little miniature like rovers and things like that. But I think that the retail version still comes with all the variability in the planets and corporations. And I still think it has that cool turntable. So honestly, even if the rest of it's cardboard shits, I think the retail version of this would be a very, very fun experience and a very cool game. And I'm tempted to pick it up, to be honest. Like my neighbor who I played it with, we played it, and he was kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it. I'll think about it. I know somebody that wants to buy the Kickstarter version. And I was like, pick me. Like, I think this is a game that will hit. Like, it's kind of like Isle of Cats level of fun of building your polyomino. but a little bit more streamlined than Isle of Cats. So I think it's a little bit more approachable for more people. I think this would get played more than Isle of Cats, but give you a similar level of fun decisions to make.
That sounds pretty attractive.
Very cool. Yeah, I see it retailing here for about $50 retail.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, and that's probably expected.
The game I had on my table a couple weeks ago was Ghosts of Christmas, designed by Taki Shinzawa and publishers BoardGameTables.com. This game I heard about on a couple of podcasts I listened to, and it was relatively inexpensive, and I enjoy trick-taking games, Chris. So I thought I'd buy this one and give it a whirl. The trick with this trick-taking game is that it's much like spades. You're making a bid at the beginning on how many tricks you think you can take. There's going to be about, in a 3-player game, you take out 1, 2, and 3 out of, I think there's 12 cards in each of 4 suits. And each round, you're going to play 3 cards, 1 to the past, 1 to the present, 1 to the future. And you can play them in any order. So player 1 can put his first card, can lead with any suit in the future if he wants. And then the second player can then put any card into he can play in the future if he wants to follow suit into the future. He can play into the past if you want to lead a new suit into the past or the present. And third player, same thing. You have that option as well. And then it goes around and around until in 3-player game, you're going to have essentially a 3x3 grid of past, present, and future. So the one that resolves first is the past. So whoever ends up with the highest suit, hearts is the trump suit in this case, but the highest number of the lead suit, unless it's a heart, wins that trick in the past. Then whoever won that suit, they get the first player marker. Now you're going to go to the present. And whoever has the first player marker, now that card that they played in that era, the present in this case, becomes the lead card. So they could have thrown off suit initially, but now that they have won that trick in the past, the card that they played initially off suit is now the lead suit. So they could have played a yellow 4, and since nobody else played a yellow 4 and didn't play trump, they win that trick too. So it's this whole complexity of bidding and sloughing off cards to set yourself up to potentially win suits that no one thought, win tricks that no one thought you were going to win with your strange deck. So it's a whole different way of looking at a trick-taking game, just with this nice twist. So I had tons of fun with it. Sarah and I played this one. You really need 3 or more players, but whatever. I don't have that many friends. So we just played the 2 of us, and I played a couple of the hands. And just walking through this game, it was cool. It's going to be quick. It's going to be brief. So each round, did you make your bid? If bids are savage too, let me talk about that a little bit. So you bid with these doors, right? If you think you're going to take 4 tricks, you can bid 4 doors. And if you make exactly that, then you get 8 points. You can also add a red door to your bid, and that gives you a little more flexibility. So say you bid 3 purples, that's the regular color door, and whatever mythical land this is, 3 purple doors and 1 red door, then you can get 3 or 4 tricks. So it gives you that 1 trick flexibility, and you only get 3 or 4 points. You don't get double points if you throw in a red door. If you overbid or underbid, you don't get any points. You're out. So you're trying to make your own bid, and you're trying to mess with your opponents so they don't make it their bid. And you play to however many points you want to play to. I think the little score tracker goes up to 40. It probably says in the rules what you're supposed to go up to. We didn't make it that far. This game is interesting. It's quick. It fits in this little teeny tiny 4-inch by 4-inch box, maybe smaller than that. It's really cute. Every time you win a trick, you grab a little wreath and you hang it on your door to mark that you are tracking your bids correctly. And then at the end of the round, after all the tricks have been played, did your wreaths match the number of doors? Did you go over? Did you go under? That's how you tally it up. Ghosts of Christmas, what a great game. Had tons of fun with it. $20 plus a little bit of shipping. Well worth it.
It sounds cute. It looks cute. I have a hard time getting past my general dislike of trick-taking games, but then I think of shamans, and I would try this one.
So first of all, we need more Charles Dickens themed IP themed board games. I love it. As soon as there's a Tale of Two Cities themed board game, I'm in. But actually, this sounds great. I like trick taking anyway, and it just sounds like it's such a. Adam, I have a question. Did it feel heavy for a trick taking game, or was it kind of like Did it feel like the same amount of teach as playing Hearts and the Crew, or did it feel like it was going to be much harder to teach somebody and get into playing it?
It's super easy to teach, super easy to learn it if you're familiar with trick-taking games. The strategy, seeing how it's all going to play out and how it's going to resolve, just so that twist, that past, present, future twist, it was just crazy. It made it so different, so unique than any other trick-taking game I've played. And it's more traditional than like Shaman. So, there's a lead suit and there's a trump suit, which I love all that stuff about trick-taking games. You do want to slough. You do want to you can probably win your high cards. And it might not even matter who, what order all this stuff resolves in until like the last round of the game when people are out of certain suits and they have maybe just all hearts or, whatever. So there's a lot of complexities going on here under what was a very simple, fun rule set. For me, one that I was familiar with from spades with the bid up front. And so it could be a little complex if you're not familiar with spades or doing that upfront bidding. It might be pretty obtuse. But after one or two, maybe do a practice round or two, and then it'll be like, oh, I see how this is flowing out. And then it could just be quick, snap them out there, play this game, go through a bunch of rounds while you're smack talking to each other.
It sounds great. And, I've wanted a holiday themed board game, and none of them that are out there sounded like interesting enough. I think this is going to be my Christmas board game this year. I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to be playing this around the holidays. Danielle and Jen are going to love it. We're going to be sitting there drinking some eggnog and playing Ghosts of Christmas. So this sounds awesome, Adam. I'm glad you tried it out. It's funny because I'd heard a couple podcasts talk about this, and the way they explained it, it just felt very obscure. Like I couldn't understand how they were trying to explain it, but the way you just explained it was very straightforward, very clear. So I feel like I could just sit down and play it right now after what you just explained. So seems like a great, quick, easy game, and bring any other people that don't sit around and play games a lot into this and have a good holiday night.
I agree. I think it'd be easy to pick up, fun to play, fun to learn, and that just is with an interesting twist.
All right, well, that will wrap up this episode of Board Game Hot Takes. If you like the show, please rate and review us on whichever podcast format you listen to. Apple Podcasts, probably the most important one, but any of them are fine. Follow us on Twitter at BG_Hot Takes. We'd love to interact with you. And please tell your friends about us. And when you're out on Board Game Geek, when you're out on Twitter, when you're out on Facebook and people are asking for podcast recommendations, mention us. That's the audience we're looking for, people that want to listen to board game podcasts. So really appreciate all of our friends that are sharing us, and love that to have all of our listeners on how much we've been growing lately. Let's keep it going. So until next week, take care, everybody.
Night all.
Bye-bye.